Welcome to Future Trends, where we examine the latest stories reshaping tomorrow's international dynamics. This week's headlines: France to recognize Palestine amid rising Gaza starvation, and Israel opposition, US and EU strike trade deal, ceasefire between Thailand and Cambodia, and hints of life on exoplanet recede. Starting with politics, France will recognize Palestine at the next UN General Assembly in September. France is the biggest and most powerful European country to recognize Palestine. More than 140 countries recognize a Palestinian state, including more than a dozen in Europe. Protests in Kiev over weakened anti-corruption independence. President Zelensky signed a law expanding the presidential office's control over Ukraine's anti-corruption bodies. The European Commission warned the move could undermine Ukraine's EU membership bid. Portugal backs Morocco's autonomy plan for Western Sahara. Portugal called the plan a serious and credible solution to the decades-long territorial dispute. The Western Sahara conflict dates to 1975, when Spain withdrew from the territory. Morocco claims sovereignty over the region, while the Algeria-backed Polisario Front continues to push for an independent state. Impeachment against Duterte unconstitutional. The Philippines Supreme Court has blocked an impeachment case against Vice President Sara Duterte, but was not absolving her of any charges. A guilty verdict in the case would have blocked her from running at the country's next presidential election. Rwanda appoints central banker as new prime minister. President Kagame has replaced Rwanda's long-serving prime minister, naming the deputy governor of the central bank, who was once pardoned for a corruption conviction, to the role responsible for the government's day-to-day operations. Turning to conflict news, Gaza starvation rising as Israel opposition grows. As the death toll from almost 2 years of war in Gaza nears 60,000, a growing number of people are dying from starvation and malnutrition, Gaza health authorities say, with images of starving children shocking the world as 28 countries, including France, Belgium and the UK, issued a joint statement saying the war in Gaza must end now and Israel must comply with international law. Israeli military statistics showed that an average of 146 trucks of aid per day had entered Gaza over the course of the war. The US has said a minimum of 600 trucks per day are needed to feed Gaza's population. Ceasefire between Thailand and Cambodia. After efforts by Malaysia, chair of the ASEAN regional bloc, the US and China, the two countries' leaders agreed during talks to end hostilities. It was their deadliest conflict in more than a decade following 5 days of intense fighting that displaced over 300,000 people. Islamic State-backed rebels kill 38 in attack on DRC church. ADF rebels attacked the Catholic Church in eastern Congo. The assault in Commander, a city in the northeastern Democratic Republic of Congo, mainly targeted Christians who were spending the night in the church. Russia and Mozambique reaffirm defense cooperation. Russia and Mozambique have intensified their military cooperation for several years. The Mozambique government hired Russian mercenaries from the Wagner paramilitary group in 2019 to help fight a jihadist insurgency. A 2020 German intelligence report found that Russia was planning to build a military base in the African country. Oil-rich Sudanese region new focus of war. The oil-rich Kordofan region has turned into a major front line in the war between the army and rival paramilitary forces, as both sides try to gain the upper hand in a conflict that has devastated the vast African state for more than 2 years. A coalition led by the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces announced the members of a parallel government, a move opposed by the army, its rival in a 27-month war that could drive the country further towards partition. Moving to economics, US and EU strike trade deal. The deal, which will impact approximately a third of global trade, includes a 15% tariff on EU goods entering the US and EU commitments to purchase U.S. energy and military equipment. The agreement will calm fears of a spiraling trade war between the two economies, with the U.S. president previously threatening 30% levies on EU imports. It follows a $550 billion agreement for a 15% import tariff with Japan last week, a 19% tariff rate with the Philippines, and 10% with the UK. Companies to invest more than $700 billion in Germany. A group of dozens of companies pledged to invest at least $733 billion in Germany over the next 3 years, sending a signal of confidence in Europe's biggest economy and its new coalition government. The economy has shrunk for the past 2 years and is expected to stagnate this year. India, UK signed landmark free trade agreement. The FTA is expected to unlock significant export opportunities for India, particularly in labor-intensive sectors such as textiles, leather, marine products, gems and jewelry, toys, and sports goods. Key industries such as auto components, engineering goods, and organic chemicals are also expected to benefit substantially. For products made in the UK, such as medical devices and aerospace parts, processed food and agricultural exports will be available at accessible and affordable prices. Why the Russian ruble is outperforming. The Russian ruble's 45% rise against the US dollar since the start of the year has made it one of the world's best-performing currencies, but the sharp appreciation for the heavily sanctioned Russian economy has resulted in US dollar-denominated energy revenues generating fewer rubles for the Russian budget, while Russian businesses argue it is making exports more expensive to buyers in dollars and other currencies. Africa to be hit hard by UK foreign aid cuts. UK government plans to cut foreign aid will result in support for children's education and women's health in Africa facing the biggest reductions. In development news, US withdraws from UNESCO. The decision to pull US funding and participation from the UN Cultural Agency comes 2 years after the Biden administration rejoined following a controversial 5-year absence that began during President Trump's first term. The White House cited similar concerns as it did in 2018, saying it believes US involvement is not in its national interest and accusing the agency of promoting anti-Israel speech. Global shift to renewable energy hits positive tipping point. Last year, 74% of the growth in electricity generated worldwide was from wind, solar and other green sources, according to a UN report. It found that 92.5% of all new electricity capacity added to the grid worldwide in 2024 came from renewables, as green energy investments reached $2 trillion last year, about $800 billion more than investments in fossil fuels. China's carbon emissions may have peaked. China is currently the world's biggest emitter, accounting for some 30% of global carbon emissions, but a new report found that in the year to May 2025, China's CO2 emissions dropped 1.6%. Green tech boom creates environmental crisis in Chile. Rising lithium demand for electric car batteries is devastating Chile's Atacama salt flats, where indigenous communities report dried wetlands, shrinking flamingo populations, and dying vegetation as mining companies extract vast amounts of water from the drought-prone region. Musk ordered shutdown of Starlink satellite as Ukraine retook Russian territory. During a pivotal push by Ukraine to retake territory from Russia in September 2022, Elon Musk gave an order that disrupted the counteroffensive and dented Kiev's trust in Starlink, the satellite internet service the billionaire provided early in the war to help Ukraine's military maintain battlefield connectivity. He reportedly ordered SpaceX, the Musk venture that controls Starlink, to cut coverage in areas including Kherson, a strategic region north of the Black Sea that Ukraine was trying to reclaim. Finally, our social news, UN court ruling. Healthy environment is a human right. A clean, healthy and sustainable environment is a human right, and if countries fail to take appropriate action to protect the climate system, they could be in violation of international law, according to the International Court of Justice in an advisory opinion on nations' climate obligations and the consequences they face if they don't fulfill them. Thai food prices rise 106.5% in 13 years. Despite the rise in food prices, the minimum wage in the same period only increased by 33.3%, creating a significant gap between wages and living costs. The research also pointed out that the rising cost of rent has significantly influenced food price hikes, which has led to a shift towards takeaway meals. Hints of life on exoplanet recede. While confirming the presence of water, perhaps even as a liquid ocean, on the distant planet K2-18b, which lies 124 light-years from Earth, the NASA-led team have failed to confirm evidence for life. Kenyan police arrest rights activist Mwangi over role in deadly protests. Kenyan police have arrested prominent human rights activist Boniface Mwangi and plan to arraign him on suspicion of facilitating terrorist acts linked to deadly anti-government protests last month. Leaf-inspired breakthrough makes bioplastics stronger and compostable. Inspired by nature, researchers have developed a new biodegradable plastic that mimics the structure of a leaf. By embedding cellulose nanofibers between two layers of bioplastic, the US team created a material that tackles two long-standing issues with bioplastics, including poor strength and the need for high-temperature composting to degrade. That's your Future Trends update for this week. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time with more stories reshaping our world.